I have my co-creator, Antwanette Bradley, with us today. And we're going to talk about this incredible journal she's just put out, My Sacred Cellf-Care Journal. And these are affirmations and intentions. And they really guide you to your sacred self. We're both coaches. She calls herself a spiritual coach. I call myself a relational soul coach. And so, Antwanette, hello.
Well, hi there.
What is this sacred self? What does that mean?
Sacred self, your higher self. The reason why I created Sacred Self is because, living in the society and living in a world, um, we are presented with so many different identities, so many different ways that we can be. And sometimes, in that space, as I was growing up, I always felt like, I didn't know who I was, number one. I did try different costumes, like society's costumes on at the time. And none of those things were fitting for me. And so, I went on my spiritual journey and came across this book called The Biology of Belief, which is like one of the best books on planet Earth. I mean, it's phenomenal. And inside the biology of belief, basically there was a scientist who kind of went rogue in science and decided to step away from like the
Mm.
standard way of doing science and kind of just cultivated his own understanding of science. And so some of the discoveries that was inside of the biology of belief was that, our cells are also a part of our existence. And um we're basically like the government to ourselves. And while people are taking in foods and taking in media and taking in music, they're not knowing that those communications that you're putting inside of your body is also connecting and aligning with yourself. And so for me, I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me I have this whole committee of cells that I'm governing? Like, I didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't have that awareness. And so I wanted to become way more aware and deliberate and conscious and governing myself, meaning, what I say to myself, what I listen to, what am I watching on television, what kind of books am I reading? And my cells are taking in those messages too. So, going through my healing journey, I was very conscious and aware of that. And I wanted to connect that to my well-being. So my sacred is like this intuition that we all have, that, it's at its rawest place. It's beautiful. It is unfiltered. There's no other messages outside that define how our sacred energy is. Like, you get to define that. And then self is, okay, now that I know that I'm sacred, like, what am I going to put into my sacred energy? Like, what am I going to put into my sacred self? And then that is how Sacred Self was born.
I just have to say, I love how you ask yourself questions.
Yes.
Literally, I mean, that's what we do as coaches. We ask powerful questions to those who are coaching, and because coaching actually believes that you do have this higher sacred self, and we're just helping you access that wisdom. And I love how you ask yourself these questions. How do I want to govern myself? How do I want to govern these cells that I have?
Yes.
Yeah, what an incredible question.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, always known that, questions are doors and windows to our soul. A question is going to bring up and light up this awareness inside of yourself. And in that awareness, when we're able to identify the origin of whatever it is that we're asking a question about, it's amazing that we also have the choice to put something there. We get to choose what we want to put there. So, in coaching, I've seen that that is probably one of my favorite elements when I am connecting with my clients and my friends. I call them my friends because, it's personal. It's a conversation. We are, patient amongst each other. And so um those questions, I mean, it raised so much awareness within that you get to put what you want there. That's the beauty in it.
I love the empowerment of that. We have the choice.
We
We
have a
could do
choice.
that. Let's talk about this, affirmations and intentions. Why are they important?
Affirmations and intentions are so important because you're the and producing a vibration over your cells, over your life, over your energy, and you get to direct what that intention is. Like, you're the first person when you speak an affirmation whose vibration goes inward. And in that inward vibration, you're basically like, you're encouraging yourself, you are uplifting yourself, you are motivating yourself. And what better voice do ourselves and our internal self respond best to outside of self? Like, it's us. And so setting those intentions and speaking the affirmations as soon as you wake up in the AM, as soon as you open your eyes, being deliberate about what you want for your day and owning that and believing that magic can happen and that you can attract that. And waking up and being deliberate about a thought. Okay, as soon as I wake up, I am worthy, or I am going to have the best day that I can possibly have. Now you just given an assignment to your soul, right? And the universe, and it's
Mm.
track those experiences for you. It's going to bring you people and bring you situations that will align with your intention, being deliberate first thing in the AM. And so the affirmations was probably one of the most crucial elements in my healing journey. It was how I was able to completely reprogram my mind. It was how I was 100% able to reprogram my habits. It was how I was able to completely direct the way that I would speak to myself and how I would speak to myself. Now I had like a template for a conversation with myself. It wasn't just, my mind wasn't an autopilot, meaning like just coming up with a.
Mm.
Now I'm in a space where, okay, I'm pausing, I'm deliberate about what I want to put here, and now that is what's governing my thought process. I'm present to it.
I love that because you and I both know that if you're not deliberate, the mind will just go with the old thoughts, the old patterns. It's almost like a looping tape.
It
And
is.
so, yeah, and so what you're basically saying is we have the power to reprogram that tape. And
Absolutely.
it's I almost feel like it's kind of like the mind is kind of like the computer, and we're going to put new software in there.
Exactly.
And so
It,
you speak to yourself from your higher sacred self with these amazing affirmations, and it does begin to reprogram the brain. So what I want to ask you, and I remember at the beginning of my journey, I was uncomfortable saying these powerful words until I finally was. So it took practice, but speak to the person who is reading, like, one of my favorites in here, and I want to ask you more about it. One of my
okay.
favorites that you have is I wake up worthy. So for that person that the old tape is still strong, they don't feel like they're waking up worthy. What are your words to that person?
You know, in my own personal experience, I had experiences very similar to not waking up worthy, to waking up and feeling, I was inadequate to society standards, and how to be recognized as a person. You should do this and you should do that. And honestly, the way that I was able to progress through that and to really grow through that was acceptance. I began to accept the fact that, okay, like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. I can accept. I refused to accept the idea that I wasn't worthy, but I did accept the fact that I was feeling that. This is how I feel. And so I began to ask myself questions like, well, where did this energy of not feeling worthy come from? What did I say that? Did I put that there? Were there experiences
Mm.
that that I said out loud to myself and spoke to myself that I wasn't worthy? More than likely not. What happens is a lot of us, when we're going through life and we're experiencing life, we meet people on different vibrations, whether that's a colleague, whether that's family members, whether that's siblings. And there are opinions that they have and share and say to us that we begin to validate and like take inward. And so now our attention is more so focused on the message that's being spoken to us versus being the person and saying, well, hey, that's your opinion or that's what you think. We don't really default into that way of responding right away. So a lot of the energy of like feeling unworthy is probably more likely coming from people that are outside of you, right? And then now we take it and then we personalize it. And so for me, I started sort first. But I went into a sorting process, figuring out like, where is my attention and energy at now? Who has that power over me? Whose words are so powerful that I literally took them from where they were and invited them into my space and made it real for me? Whose words are that powerful to put me in this position? I just took note of it. I took note of it. I started to note the people who I felt I was giving a lot of my attention and power and energy to. And, that's where we get into setting the and calling that power back. And that's a whole nother conversation I know that we'll touch on, but that is where I call my power back was born. That's how it was born.
Mm. I love how experiential this is. I mean,
Mhm.
this is literally every one of these is so experiential. And you do have in here, I'm trying to find it. You basically have in here, I do not lease my power out.
I do.
And no, and it's so great to hear that came from the sorting process of where did this, I want to say, ridiculous message come from that's telling me I'm not worthy? Where did it
Mhm.
come from? Sorting through that and realizing, oh, someone told me that. And then the power of knowing I don't have to believe that.
Do not.
That's theirs, not mine.
Correct.
So no
That
matter what the external is saying or doing, it doesn't need to affect us unless we let it.
exactly.
Which reminds me of another one you have in here about inviting.
Yes.
You do you remember the one you have in here about I only allow into my space and mind what I invite there? It's something like that. And again, another great powerful affirmation for someone to
Yes.
do.
Yes, and so that affirmation was born from being once I became aware and deliberate about what am I saying to myself, about what am I allowing to come into my vibration, into my spirit, into my energy. Now I realize that I have, now once after things sorting through the origins of where these ideas and these limitations came from, it then exposed to me, hey, I actually have a choice about what I'm going to entertain, what I choose to entertain, or the energy that I choose to make real, or what power I choose to focus my attention on. And so in that space, I realized that, what, anytime that I'm interacting with someone, And let's just say that the vibration just isn't where I am, or if their energy doesn't necessarily align with my intention that I set for the day or my affirmation that I set for the day. Now it's an invitation at this point. Now I have the right to say, you know what? I'm not inviting that energy into my life right now. I'm not inviting that vibration into my life right now. I have the choice to choose what energies that I want to invite into my space that is going to align with my affirmations, my intention, how I'm thinking, what I'm processing. And that now puts me into a space and a state of being that is in flow, right? I'm in flow with my intention. Like now I know for sure
Mm,
myself. Now I've validated my affirmation. Okay. And it's me, it's coming from me. So it's not coming from another person on the outside saying, hey, you should
mm,
accept my energy or accept,
mm.
because I've already set that up for the day. I've already set up.
Yeah, which
Now
reminds me of another thing that you say is I am my authority.
I am. Absolutely.
So
You are.
you yeah. So so my sacred self is my authority, not you out there. You are not my authority.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What
Now taking your power, your true sacred energy, your true sacred just embodiment of life and spirit, and now you're trusting in that intuition, you're trusting in that, and you're building that alone by by yourself, not alone in the sense of like being separated from people, but now you get to be that source. Now you're the source. And I think that honestly, when you really move into that power and accept and embrace that space, you will be just amazed at what you attract in your life, in the people that you interact with. You'd be absolutely amazed. And even if the people aren't in that alignment, now you can discern that, right? You can discern that and say, hey, you know what? This isn't working out for me for whatever reasons. But now your power in, you're connected to your power, and she's activated.
so what I hear you essentially saying is you're not a victim to life.
No, no,
No.
no, because I
Mm-mm.
what's here. I direct and I govern what's here. Like outside things, they're no longer my authority. So I'm not dependent on, what's happening around me, even in environments. Sometimes we can become very attached to the environments around us, not that our true power is internal. Our environment is inside. It's once you start to really, really tap into your own environment, the inner environment though, not the external environment. Once you really begin to tap into your inner environment, this is your garden. Now you get
Mm.
to seeds inside of your garden that are going to encourage you, that are going to uplift you, that will motivate you. And pretty soon, your garden will begin to reflect around you, So you taking that time, energy, and building yourself and confirming yourself and loving
Mm.
yourself,
Mm.
it's a beautiful space to be in.
Nurturing your own garden.
Nurturing your
Yeah.
own garden.
Yeah. So I think it's important to address that the person who's not accustomed to I am my own authority and really recognizing their sacred self. And so that person that is still sort of reaping the consequences of choices made from the old tape, from the old messages in the mind, from what they thought others had told them about themselves. So the person that's still so basically when I share my story, I talk about how I had some very expensive choices that I made. And what I mean by expenses in honestly financially, but time.
Mm.
So, like, early in my 20s, the man I was married to then, that was a very expensive choice made from, you know, I call it the wounded ego. Um, I listened to the external voices that had told me, you're not worth it. Um, well, actually, I don't think they told me I'm not worth it. I interpreted anything anyone said. I was this walking victim, hurt all the time. So I
Right.
wasn't in my power. And so as a victim, they were my authority. And so
Right.
making choices from there, yeah. So that was a 7-year mistake, or not mistake. That was a 7-year expense. Of
Mhm.
course, now I see during that time, I was able to slowly find myself. So I actually realized how this person that I was married to, that was pretty awful, narcissist and very sociopathic, it was so uncomfortable. It forced me to look
Mm.
inward and go, okay, this doesn't feel good. And
Ex
yeah, I found myself through that pain. So I guess I just want to address the person out there that's really loving what we're saying, really wanting to make herself her own authority and listen to these words and make them become her own. Like, I live my best life. All the things I love want me, all coming from here.
I
Today I take my power back.
I
Yeah,
love,
right?
especially
Yeah.
the, everything that I love loves me. That is of such a powerful affirmation and energy and vibration just to speak over your entire existence, just to internalize that, because now it puts, your mind, soul in the space to recognize like what you love, now you are
Mm.
the lens of love, and you're becoming conscious that of that alignment in that relationship of what it feels like to love something. Things that we love don't always have to be human beings. They don't always have to be people. You can love birds and love nature and love painting and love communicating. I mean, the list is endless. And so that alone, that affirmation alone is going to raise your vibration and literally just it's going to open up your spirit to being receptive to that. Attracting and receiving the things that you love because they love you back. They love you back.
I love that. So, what I hear you saying is that these affirmations, so even if you're in a really difficult space, if you begin them, it's a vibrational frequency. So even
Ab-
if you don't fully feel them yet, and you don't feel like you're there yet, just by saying them and writing about them, you are connecting with yourself in a way
Absolutely.
that you might not have before. And you're literally raising your vibration when you do that.
Mhm.
I think that's powerful right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. By speaking those, I mean, there's a common misconception, in in speaking affirmations that you don't feel. I think that people, based on just experience, when they're reading these affirmations or different affirmations, because they feel like, oh, well, I don't feel that, or I'm not in that space right now, or, I don't know if I can believe this yet. Well, the fact that you are even starting and opening your vibration and opening your energy to at least entertaining the energy alone is enough. Right there. Right there is enough to make these impacts. When we are speaking these affirmations, even though, sometimes we may not feel the affirmation, or sometimes we may not feel like, well, I'm not in that space um, to speak this type of affirmation. What what is a good thing to take into mind, into consideration, is that present moment is always changing. Okay? The present moment
Mm.
always changing. There's never not one moment that's the same as the last moment a moment ago. If that makes sense. So now with you speaking this energy into your life and you're speaking these affirmations, you at least open up the door, the the alignment, your vibration for change. You're opening your energy to be receptive to a moment that may now align with that affirmation that you're speaking. Okay? It's almost like a garden, right? No one looks at a garden and expects, they look at it and say, "Oh, even though this garden doesn't have all of these flowers, they won't grow." You're open to that. You're receptive to the fact that once you start planting these seeds into the garden, that you're gonna expect some type of flower or rose or a tulip or whatever it is that you're growing in this.
Oh.
That's how affirmations work too. You're seeding your garden, your soil. You're seeding your soil with these affirmations into your spirit, and just check on your garden day by day,
Mm.
checking on your spirit day by day, and you're seeding this energy into your life until it blossoms, because it does. It will blossom. You will blossom. Your spirit for sure will
And
blossom.
that's yeah, and that's
So,
nature, and just because I know you, you're always making references to nature as we see you sitting in nature, which is just amazing. And we are nature. I love when you talk about that. I mean, we're kind of heading in that direction.
yes, we are
You don't have to tell the seed to grow. Like once it's planted, it's gonna.
going to. It is. It already knows the direction. It is a part of the life of an energy of nature. Looking outside and looking at the sun and looking at the moon and birds and water. It's a conversation. Nature is always showing us reflections of ourselves. And when you start to become conscious of being present, and you're taking that time to heal and to grow. I can't speak for everyone else's experiences of what nature shows them, because I believe nature shows us different parts of ourselves that want to be seen at whatever time.
Mm.
In that time to go into nature, to write your affirmations down, to speak your affirmations down, and just look. I mean, it's like your mind is clear, your heart is open, and just watch. And there's a message for all of us in nature. Maybe different messages, but that nature essentially is a reflection of what's actually inside. And when we're quiet and you're taking that time to build you internally, build yourself, your sacred self, they automatically have this conversation. Your sacred self in nature, they're one of they're one of the same. They're literally one of the same.